Hey everyone, this is John.
This is Hector.
And this is Chapter 6 of The Watchmen. And, oh man, this one is a doozy. Because this one is probably almost exclusively Rorschach. You might get some other characters here and there. But he is the primary focus. And this is after, of course, he's been arrested and unmasked. And it starts out with him and his psychiatrist, which we might as well just address this real quick at the beginning. It's different from the movie because the psychiatrist is his character gets a lot more attention, a lot more growth, which I think works really well for the overall arc of the story. Like this psychiatrist is really fascinating dude. But,
yes, it's pointing out the irony of this, but if I'm even using that word right, it's giving Rorschach a Rorschach test.
Yeah,
is what we're doing.
Yeah, and it's conveyed really nicely that he is lying about what he sees. He's seeing these really graphically violent images. He's saying that he's seeing just ordinary very optimistic, or he says he sees butterflies and flowers and stuff.
Yeah.
When of course he is not. And this psychiatrist is buying it hook, line, and sinker. I think you get from the context of the pages that they've been working together for a little while.
Yeah,
maybe a couple weeks.
Yeah, he's been locked up for a little bit.
But of course, it's not too long because the entire arc of the story takes place through the month of October.
Right. Like you said, we get more growth with this psychiatrist, and what's really funny he's buying into it, and you see his thought process on it. I'm getting through to him, and then you see Rorschach is no, you're not.
No, he's been stonewalled here.
Yes.
Rorschach is telling what he wants to hear, and he's buying it hook, line, and sinker. I do also want to talk briefly about how Rorschach speaks, and it's something that we haven't really talked about, but it's something that really comes to the forefront when you read through this panel. Is Rorschach does not use very many personal pronouns, especially first person pronouns like I. Everything's very detached, and his sentences don't have very many subjects. He almost always starts with the verb, or not very many articles. His sentences read very clinically, or a police report. It's very few words, very few adjectives, just very dry in the way he talks.
He's very to the point. Mm-hmm. He doesn't flower up his language. Like you said, it's like a police report. It's all fact.
Yeah.
It's all detail. This is what I'm saying. I deal with it.
Right, right. And from a clinical psychological perspective, I have no idea what that means. Yeah. It's just a really interesting way that his character communicates.
Right.
But through the first few pages of the issue here, you see this very damaged youth that he had.
His mother was, she got around. No, it's one of those things. Was she a prostitute? Wasn't she? He kind of alludes to that she was, but it also could be people are saying it because they're trying to get at him.
Right. Is she actually someone who is doing that for a living, or does she just have a reputation?
Yeah. And so you kind of get a sense that she really doesn't have. It's more of a reputation than anything else.
That's the way I read it. Yeah.
Yeah. Because especially when he just throws $5 at her. Yeah. It's $5. What?
Yeah. That's not something and she's offended.
Yes.
By the amount, and then also by the fact it just seems like she's more offended by the amount, but also that he's
walking out.
Money. Yeah.
And he's walking out on her.
And she takes her wrath out on little Rorschach. What is it? Walter Kovac is his real name.
Yes.
Or his birth name.
After that, we go into him walking through the cell block, and now everybody. It's kind of I like to always compare things to Law and Order, or Law and Order SVU, or Criminal Intent. Okay, I love Law and Order.
There's a reason that show never goes off the air.
And it's me. But anytime that they have something that a cop did, they're always well, you can say to your friends that you locked up.
Yeah.
You're responsible for. Because if you go to prison or jail and you were a cop, you're kind of they're going to attack them. If you're a dirty cop and you get caught, everybody that you put away is going to be in the same place you are. So they're going to they're going to come after you. And this is exactly what this is.
Yeah, he's a man with a target on his back.
But as he's walking in, you're getting people just screaming stuff at him. And it kind of like takes him back and he goes into his own mind where he's a kid walking down the street and he's being ganged up on because, just because people are being bitches.
Yeah. And you do get that flashback of him being a kid and him being bullied, and you see from a very young age his pent-up rage and
he snaps.
Yeah, his capability of extreme violence.
And once again, like I said, he snapped. You see the moment where he snapped. Because you can tell just by this short amount of time and you're paying attention to his youth that this is somebody who is, or even before that, like just the way he's dealing with everything, that's somebody who just took a lot and finally has given it back. Because, they have a guy who smashes a cake into his face or whatever, and then there he is, he attacks it, rips the cigarette out of his mouth, burns him in the eye, and then starts gnawing on his cheek.
Very savage, and he turns that really savage rage and capability of violence into this sort of warped view of what justice is, because he goes out and he fights crime, so to speak, but he's more of a character that seeks retribution.
Yes.
Rather than justice. And you see there are a bunch of these people in jail who knows who he is. You assume he has some sort of hand in putting them there. But it's his reputation is certainly for brutality.
Right. Because once again, now after all his flashbacks, now we go back to his psychologist.
Yeah.
Who is kind of not bragging to his wife, but I'm breaking through to him. This is so great. This is going to be...
Yeah, this is the psychological case of the decade. I'm going to have such a great reputation because I've been able to sort of crack this case.
And the next day, it kind of goes to shit for him. Rorschach just becomes Rorschach again. And best line is, one of the best lines. This has a lot of really good one-liners. This one is I don't like, you can call me Walter. I don't like you very much.
It's so good. And in the movie, the actor who was playing Rorschach had such a great read of this line, because it's such a really good line.
Yeah.
In this one. You keep calling me Walter. I don't like you.
You haven't earned calling me Rorschach, but at the same time, calling him Walter is pissing them off. The more you call him that name, the angrier he's getting, because he's not Walter. He's Rorschach.
Right. And you finally see those personal first and second person pronouns coming out. These sentences are real because he's actually bothering to use them.
Mm-hmm.
And this is he starts to describe his past and how he came about having the mask made out of a special fabric, and why it is that he decided to become a costume crime fighter.
Yeah, and it's just because because like you said, it's him giving back.
And you follow it up the origin of his costume with this lunch procession, and he is under threat of attack by this other inmate. He throws it in his face.
It's basically he's protecting himself. He's
no.
He's doing what they say if you ever go to prison or jail. You go to the biggest guy, you start a fight, and then you might get your ass beat, but nobody's going to mess with you because you're crazy. It's not that he's doing that, but he made an example of this prisoner. You know who I am. You know what I can do. Let me remind everybody.
After you have this act of violence where he puts a man in the infirmary, and I think this inmate is in critical condition and might even end up dying in the comic here. But you cut back to the psychologist, or probably a psychiatrist, he can probably prescribe medicine, just starting to become unhinged, and this Rorschach case totally taking over his life, and his wife starting to resent him for it.
What's also interesting about this too is now you're getting Rorschach's story straight from Rorschach.
Yeah.
You are getting detail by detail why he's doing what he's doing, when he's doing it, the feeling behind it. It's he's doing it and he doesn't care if these guys are hurt paralyzed. And one thing that it's all that we've mentioned is that he doesn't really kill unless he has to.
Right, but he also has no qualms about severely injuring or maiming people, because that's the sort of criminal subject in his mind. They are undeserving of any sort of regard for corporeal preservation. Like who cares if you are paralyzed for life? You're a criminal.
Yes. We find out that before he joins the Watchmen, he teams up with Night Owl first, and they're kind of like, like a dynamic duo, the two of them.
I'm sure that was a buddy cop romp. The two of them.
And they kind of join together. Once again, the subtle newspaper headlines. There's that one panel at the end of the 15th page of that issue where it says like Keen Act passed. So that's the vigilante pass and him walking away, but he's still dressed up as Rorschach. Like the personality is taken over.
Yeah, and it is this show of, in a very literal sense, solidarity, because he's the only one left. You have panels previous to that where he's teaming up with Dan Driver, the Night Owl, and you see the crime busters having their meeting there, and the comedian Edward Blake burning the map. You have that scene again. So he is carrying on the fight because he does have that very distorted view of justice.
Right.
Whereas everyone else is just kind of falling away.
After all of that, we get into a really interesting story, and kind of the one that made Rorschach the vigilante that he is.
Yeah.
When he goes after the rapist.
Yeah, he has this moment of honesty with his psychiatrist there, where he tells like the actual story of what he saw with like the dead dog, which to me looks like a pig, but if he says it's a dog, I have no reason to mistrust that.
Yes, he says it's a dog, it's a dog.
Yeah.
He might come after us. But, yeah, he goes into the story about like what he did, how he did it.
And a lot of these panels have no dialogue to them. It's great because you're just visually taking through his procedure of investigating this kidnapping and how, and you're putting together what's actually happening with him. And by the time you get to the end of it, when he grabs that cleaver, after he's gone through all of this, like how do you, like he's murdering animals, but it's hard to disagree with what he's doing. Like maybe he didn't have to kill the dogs, that might be a step too far. But like after he kills the dogs, the owner comes home, the perpetrator of these heinous crimes against this child, which if it wasn't clear from I guess we never did really make it clear, like this criminal kidnapped a child, murdered her, incinerated her body, and gave the bones to the dogs.
Yes.
And then he meets Rorschach.
Yes, and then it's Rorschach. He's telling this story about this is like the time that I didn't bring him to justice like I should have. I killed him.
I gave him Rorschach justice.
Yes. Which should be the ultimate justice in his opinion.
You have the conclusion of that, the perpetrator begging for his life, first trying to deny things and then trying to get out of it by admitting it, and Rorschach just burns him alive. And this is a really horrific way to die. It all ending with Rorschach concluding his story with the psychiatrist leaving the room, leaving the psychiatrist to deal with his emotions about what he just heard.
Which is interesting because, I mean, I remember someone saying once that being a psychologist is one of the lowliest jobs because, you're hearing everybody else's problem and you're supposed to be like vacant and, not show too much reaction. And here he is just like, and trying not to get shook by a story or by an experience, let the people talk. And he went ahead and shook this guy.
Yeah.
Like, the rest of this chapter is just him going through his life and not knowing what to do.
And see, the thing is, he's gotten to a point where it's certainly affecting his personal life, as you see in the next few panels. But you see that he doesn't entirely disagree with what Rorschach did, even though what Rorschach did was horrific, because he was punishing a criminal who committed a truly terrible act. And he doesn't know how to deal with it because his own sense of justice has now been distorted.
It got into his head. And that's the great thing about like this character in general is just his complexity is ridiculous.
Yeah. And you get more glimpses into that in the final pages, where this time it's not an excerpt from a novel or some sort of analysis. It's a bunch of little snippets of like police reports or psychiatric evaluations for Rorschach, and it's really interesting. This is one of the ones that I actually read all the way through, because you get like letters that Rorschach has written, like about like a dream that he had.
Yep.
You get a picture that Rorschach drew when he was a child, still calling like himself Walter.
It's a psychiatric file, is what
Yeah.
it is, which is makes it even like not scarier, but like it gives it more of a realness.
Yeah. But this one was actually a really interesting read. As soon as I saw what it was at the end of it, I immediately had to read through it, because Rorschach's such a fascinating character, because it gives you this perspective, like with Hollis Mason writing about the Minutemen. You get the idea that a lot of them, became these costume heroes for these reasons of desire for adventure or publicity. But then you also get characters like Rorschach who become these costume vigilantes because it is their only outlet for their rage. Like, they are truly damaged human beings who, don't really have a sense of true justice, but they're using the guise of justice and law and order to let out their own frustrations.
You have to look at this guy too. Like, he's utterly alone. Like, he has no family. I mean, it lists in there that he doesn't have. They don't know who his father is. His mother, he probably long gone, and he doesn't have any friends besides who he had at the Watchmen. But when they retired, he probably considered them like betraying him.
Yeah.
And leaving him on his own, and leaving him.
Yeah,
so,
he was the only one left plugging his fingers in the dam or paling the water out of a sinking ship.
Yeah, and he continued doing it, and he still does. Like, even in prison, you're gonna we see that he's not done.
And it's an interesting thing to think about in the perspective of one of the overarching themes of the book. A book about a post-hero world.
Right.
And it's not only a post-hero world from the perspective of people living in a post-hero world, it's a post-hero world for the heroes themselves as well. And like, how do these individuals who are dressing up as costume heroes, how do they react to a world that has now moved on from them?
Which is funny because sometimes that theme is touched in other books. Like, one of my favorite graphics of all time is Kingdom Come from DC. It's essentially a Superman story where the new generation of superheroes have become so extreme that he just leaves and goes into retirement, and now he has to come back, and it's his perspective on all that. Like, what's gonna happen?
Yeah. That sort of complexity to all these different perspectives about how there can be so many different ways to look at a post-superhero world. That complexity between characters and general population and world leaders and all-powerful beings all have these different ways that they are affected by a post-superhero world. That sort of complexity is one of the really beautiful things about the Watchmen. Maybe I should read it again one day.
Yeah.
But I think that's going to bring this show to a close. Chapter 7. We'll be back with Chapter 7 fairly soon.
Yeah.